this one. Tangier, say something. Can't hear you. Tangier.
Oh no. That's better.
We can see you and you're moving, but we can't hear you. I think it's that one AirPod that you have. That's what the problem is. It's going to the other one that's not in your... You can't hear us? I guess he can't. Yeah. All right, everybody. We're going to work this out. Tangier, log back out and log back in again. See if that fixes it. But everybody, this is Final Cut TV. We are live. We have a special edition today. We had a little bit of technical problems going forward. I had with Restream.io initially did not get the feed that I was sending it. But regardless of that, look who we have over here. Brad Olson. Right?
Oh, it's me. Hey.
Yeah, it's Brad Olson. It's over there. Down there in the lower left-hand corner is Miss Serena Catania. In the middle, Philip Hodgetts. And right below me, who we can't talk to yet, Tangier Clark. I'm going to log him out. I'm going to log him out. And then he'll come back. Oops.
Oh, where's Clark?
Sorry. I clicked and there he is. And soon as sorry.
You know, that would make an amazing comedy routine, a group of technologists fiddling around with the controls. That's crazy.
Sorry, Philip. I clicked on Tangier's X, and you popped right in there. I clicked on it again. Tangier, can you hear us now? Okay, we still can't hear you, though. Check your audio settings. Okay, you can hear us, though? Okay. He can hear us. So below me is Tangier Clark. So Brad's in Utah. Serena's you're in California, Serena?
I'm in San Diego.
San Diego. And Philip, where are you located?
In Los Angeles, on the outskirts of Chatsworth.
Okay. And I think Tangier is in LA. Something like that. Oh, we can hear you now. What'd you do?
Yes.
Oh, hooray. It's a miracle.
Took it off of these and switched to a different mic.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, I was telling everybody off air, I got a new pair of AirPods 2. I like the version 1 so much that I bought the 2, even though I don't need them. They were on sale at Amazon, $50 off. But I don't use them for the live stream. I use the wired one. I like it better. It's more dependable. I don't have to worry about Bluetooth and all that nonsense. So what's everybody doing for Thanksgiving? Is everybody having a traditional meal? Or...
Yeah. With not traditional family, but a traditional meal.
Right. I mean, so you and Greg have like turkey, Philip?
Yeah, we'll go and visit with friends that we celebrated about the last 10 or 15 Thanksgiving with. Starting when my mum came to visit, we'd start sharing it with them then. And now that my mum doesn't come visiting anymore, we still go there for Thanksgiving. It's an eclectic group of mostly not family members but all friends who've been long-term friends who have otherwise nowhere else to be on Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. That's a great thing to do. I've done the same thing in the past. I've always invited people that maybe their family's out of town or whatever. I always do that. I invite them over. So
People coined the term Friendsgiving.
Well, there you go.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's sweet.
Speaking of that, normally this time of year, we're at the Creative Summit.
Yes.
So I really, really miss that this year. Miss it so much that I have a documentary coming out, the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit documentary. But it's not, it's from 2016 to 2019 when we were all in person. Yeah. And, it's centered around those four. So, and everybody's in it except Tangier. Tangier wasn't there, so he wasn't in it, but the rest of us were in it multiple times. I'm not going to say any more than that. You have to wait till it comes out. It's about 40 some minutes right now. I got it 40 some minutes.
What a great
I filmed
idea.
about 20, I got about 20 hours, 30 hours, something like that, of the Creative Summit over those years. Behind the scenes stuff, I didn't do the presentations. I did a little bit, but that's not what I was there for. So one thing I want to mention real quick, I'm going to dedicate this episode of Final Cut TV to some very special people, Adele Stores and Braden Stores. Now, if you know Braden Stores, he's the admin over there at the biggest Final Cut Pro Facebook group. But I'm not going to go into details. If you're friends with them, you can find out. They have a beautiful family and they can use everybody's well wishes, shout outs, and prayers right now. I just want to mention that. Fantastic family and going through a little bit of tough times right now. So dedicated to Adele, Braden, and his family. So
Absolutely.
Final Cut. Is there any news about Final Cut right now? Does anybody have anything? I've been waiting.
New news, but
I've been
I really
waiting.
want to hear about how you guys are using Cinematic. We can wait for that, Richard.
Oh, no. Let me tell you something. Brad, you have the iPhone 14, right?
Yeah, I do.
I didn't use the cinematic mode with 13 because it only was 1080p.
Yeah, it was
With
different,
4K, and one of the biggest improvements on the 14 Pro Max, that front-facing camera is 4K, and it is cinematic 4K. The front-facing camera, the front-facing camera is so much improved. It's incredible. I can't believe how better it is. I think they had 4K before, but they made a better camera. So, how are we using cinematic? I use it for some things. But you need Final Cut Pro on Ventura in order to use it. Is that, Philip, you tell me, is that bizarre? They came out with the iPhone 14 in September. They showed off the 4K cinematic mode at the event. And then we came to find out, you can't use it on the current OS. You have to wait for Ventura. That is the strangest release.
Yeah, but after you said that, I was concerned because I'd been shooting on Cinematic, and I called some friends at Apple, and they said, no, you don't have to have Ventura. It works now. And then I pulled up the instructions, and it just was so involved and convoluted, and you need this and you need that. So I literally have
in Final Cut, in Final Cut, you absolutely need Ventura to use cinematic mode shot on OS 16. Okay, which is the 14 Pro Max, 14 Pro. You absolutely need Ventura. It does not work you have to have two things, Serena, iOS 16 and Final Cut Pro. If you're going to edit that cinematic in Final Cut Pro, you need Ventura. It's absolute. They have a tech note out. But I mean,
they claim that's not true, and
it's nonsense.
I'm pretty sure it is, Serena. I've heard this from multiple sources.
No, Apple has their own note.
But are you working with an iPhone 14 and iOS 16?
Yeah,
or something older? Okay.
No,
but yeah,
brand new
clearly
iPhone
they changed
14 Pro.
Okay. Well, clearly they changed something in the underlying frameworks, but yes, definitely you do need Ventura to run iOS or to run cinematic mode in Final Cut Pro from that generation of cinematic mode. It's obviously just something in the frameworks changed, and you have to look into an updated framework and an update.
I haven't yet.
I'm not even sure if
they have a cinematic mode clip to test.
No, I tested it. No, I tested it before Ventura was public because it did not work with Monterey. Okay?
Right.
It did not work. You didn't have the controls in the inspector. If you clicked on the control, the cinematic control, it said not available or something like that. Even though it was I could do a smart collection of cinematic clips in the browser, and it would collect them all, but you couldn't edit it in Monterey. Could not happen. So I did, but that was before Ventura came out. So I tried it with the Beta 7, and it worked. With Ventura Beta 7, it worked. So But it's just so
Isn't it
strange.
frustrating when something comes out and you want to use it? I mean, I have 2 sequences in Final Cut in there right now with the cinematic media in there. Of course, I've upgraded. I've uploaded to the latest version of the OS, so I should be okay. But it delayed it because I couldn't get it to work, and I called Apple, and they said, no, 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 it works, and they sent me a link and all of these instructions, and I still couldn't get it to work. So you're right, Richard.
Well, what I mean is, if you can edit it on the phone, you can do it in the phone, but you can't Final Cut. It was the Final Cut in Ventura. The handshake wasn't whatever. But it's just so bizarre. They released it. They featured in the event, and you got to wait. You got to wait till Ventura comes out. I've never seen them do that before. I don't think. Maybe I did, but I don't recall.
Well, I mean, wasn't there an underlying OS required for some of the machine learning when they introduced the tracking? There was an OS requirement for that too.
Okay.
Final Cut, more than anything else, draws very heavily on the OS frameworks. Whereas, if you're Adobe or if you're Avid, you have to write your own media handling, you have to write your own JIDAs for everything. Whereas if you're working on only one OS, you can call on the frameworks that are native to that operating system.
Okay.
The disadvantage is if the framework changes out of sync with something else, like the framework has only changed in a new OS, but you've got a release that is coming out now with the phone because you've got hardware deadlines and supply chain all set up for that. Sorry, Ventura, OS team, that you're behind schedule, but the hardware train is never going to come marching down.
So I guess it would have been better if they made that announcement during the presentation. I guess that's my point. They should say, coming in Ventura, you can edit this in Final Cut, but they didn't mention it. They just said, oh, you can edit this in Final Cut Pro. Not with the public release of the OS, you can't. I edited
We're not mad at you, Apple. We're just frustrated because we want it. Well, I'm on Ventura 13.0.1 now, so I should be okay today.
Yeah. I usually wait a little bit, but listen. So I have a split SSD. I have a dual boot SSD on my MacBook Pro. Is it on? Yeah, on my MacBook Pro. And I made it's not a partition, it's a volume. I made a partition for Ventura, made a partition for Monterey. But as I was downloading Ventura, I left and did something. It came back and it updated my Monterey volume.
Oh no!
That was. Usually it stops, doesn't it say, and lets you choose what? But didn't happen this time. So it upgraded my Monterey volume. So I had to go back and reinstall Monterey on the other partition instead of Ventura. But the good thing is it kept all my settings. Everything, for the most part, seems to be working. So that's a good thing. But yeah.
I'll
Richard,
make a carbon copy cloner of my drive before I do it.
Yeah, that's
yes.
smart.
No, I did that. I did all that. For sure. I do backups. I don't use what is that built-in one that Apple makes? Backup system. Time machine. I don't use Time Machine. Isn't there a problem if you make a Time Machine volume, you can't do some things on that volume or something? It's something weird. Yeah, that's bizarre. So I don't do that. I just do.
And is it that you can't boot from it? Is that what it is? Like, it's been a long
There's
time
something weird. There's something that says you can't use this volume because it's a Time Machine volume. I've had that happen in the past.
Well, the problem I have is that I've got way too much stuff, and you need a huge drive to run your Time Machine. So when that started happening, when 4K came out, I stopped using Time Machine. Did you notice that system preferences looks different when they put a new OS in there and everything's changed? I went to add my third monitor this morning and it's configured totally differently. So it's like, oh my gosh, I'm walking a different path. I'm sure it'll be fine, but it's a little annoying at first.
All right, I'm going to check my volume. I got a text that my volume's too loud compared to everybody else. So let's turn everybody else up and turn me down. There. Brad, I think you can actually text in the green room, Brad, I think.
I can text in the green room. Sorry, it was already in messages.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm going to turn mine down a little bit. I didn't pay attention to balancing out the volume, so now it should be better. Thank you for whoever sent that to Brad so we can have a good event here. So back to the original question. Has anybody heard any that you can talk about in public, any Final Cut Pro news in the last couple of months? 6 months? Since we've had, Philip, tell me this.
Come on, Philip. Come on, Philip.
So Gabriel said, "You're welcome." I guess he's the one that said I was too loud. Thank you, Gabriel. I have been accused of being loud sometimes. That's true, but not usually on these. Usually it's pretty well balanced. But I wasn't paying attention, so I turned myself down and turned everybody else up. So, Philip, tell me this. Brad, Serena, and Tangier, I don't ever recall having 3 bug fixes in a row in Final Cut. And that's what we've had since last. We've had 10.3, 4, and 5, and they're all bug fixes.
There was a period when they were restructuring between the separate events and projects and bringing things together into a library. There was a very long period there, almost 2 years, where we had nothing but bug fix updates. Now, fortunately, I know absolutely nothing, so I can speculate wildly. But usually that means that they're working on something fairly major that requires some heavy restructuring, so like digging up the yard to put a new drain in or run a new power line from the mains, sort of stuff.
Right.
So we got a structure site below us, so I'm stuck in metaphors right at the moment. Yeah.
Right.
So that would be my inference, but and I would hope that was collaboration, but who knows?
And we just got this comment. Any big Final Cut Pro updates we should look forward to? Yes. You should always be looking forward to a new Final Cut Pro update. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
Philip, remember that awful bug a few months ago when all of a sudden all of my drives went offline and I couldn't load any of my drives, and we were thinking it was a problem with soft RAID and the M1 chip, right? And it turned out to be a bug in the new version of the OS. And once you and Greg helped solve that one, right? Solved time,
One, I think.
the atomic clock.
No, it was they rewrote the parser for what it was about a year ago now, because it's in my Facebook memories recently. But they rewrote the XML parser, and it was not parsing correctly, inputting correctly if you were in any language not in a region, not the US, or a language not in or the UK or Australia.
Right.
Because we had people reporting across the globe for Lumberjack, that we were able to sort of lock it down fairly quickly.
Yeah, so other time zones. Mine was the disks weren't loading, and the folks at SoftRaid actually wrote a bug fix for the OS that would allow all the drives to be loaded. That got really scary.
Yeah.
Serena, was that on Ventura?
No, that was a couple of editions ago.
Monterey?
I think it was Monterey. I don't know. It's been a while. Philip, it was right around the time that you were having the time zone problem. And I remember I just put out this panic.
On that. Yeah.
And then there were a lot of other people that were having the same problem. So I called the guys over at SoftRaid, and they helped create a bug to fix it, to fix the OS.
Well, that's good, because
they were awesome.
When I think I did the beta, Ventura Beta 7, to get cinematic mode working in Final Cut, and my RAID was connected. I didn't intend it to be connected because I knew it didn't have drivers for Ventura. My RAID was connected, and it came up as independent drives. It says, "Do you want to initialize this drive? Do you want to No, don't initialize anything, please." So then I went on the Soft RAID beta group, and they had a beta that was working in Ventura. So I loaded that in, and then their Soft RAID came up. But it was like all these things pop, 8 drives popped up. I said, no, don't initialize anything, please.
No, gosh, don't want to do that.
No, especially with that. I mean, I didn't think it was plugged in, but it was plugged in.
So are you still using voice isolation?
Yeah, I use it in everything. I use it in everything. I mean, anything that's appropriate, it just, unless I'm in the studio, like I won't use it on any voices here because we're all isolated in the studio, but any kind of environment where there's any kind of background noise, it improves it. It's not noise reduction. People keep saying noise reduction. It's not noise reduction. Voice isolation is different. I don't know exactly how. Philip maybe can explain it. I know it's AI, they call it, or machine learning. Why voice isolation is different than the noise reduction. I know it just pulls the voice out of the background somehow. Is that what it does, Phil?
Because it has been trained to know the difference between voice and background noise on a more sophisticated level than these are the frequencies of the voice and these are the frequencies of the background noise, because if that background noise is in the same frequency range, you can't really isolate it. So what they've done is they've trained the machine to recognize what is voice and what is not voice, and then it isolates that in same way that we're using machine learning to isolate images. It's like you can just point at an object on a runway ML. You can just like, I want that object, and it recognizes the object and removes the background or fills in the object automatically because it recognizes the object. And we're seeing a lot more of this. Some of the Adobe sneak peeks were pretty cool, the way that they're going to be recognizing planes and the objects within a live image. So it's a really, really exciting time because the machine learning stuff is now becoming part of our everyday working life.
Tangier, what about you? Have you used voice isolation?
I do. I do. And sometimes I feel guilty doing so. A little dirty, maybe. It's, it's to Philip's point. These are conversations I'm having with my students, especially a lot, because, I initially complained, and I think I mentioned to you guys this before, when I asked them, what is this photo with, the sharp in the foreground and soft focus in the background? They all said, what's the mode on the iPhone? I would call it shallow depth
portrait.
Field. Portrait. They call it portrait. I just completely was not happy. Right? So, that just really unnerved me. But I get it. They grew up with these devices. So to Philip's point, AI is and machine learning is so integrated now. I didn't want to show them about the voice isolation, but I've shown them, and I wanted to show them more about frequencies and things like that, and kind of get some more fundamentals.
Some of the basics.
Know it's there. Now they're just going to use it, and it is what it is. I can't really.
So the default on it is 50%. Do you have to dial it down? Because I was getting some distortion.
I dial it down.
Right.
I still dial.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Just got to do these checks while I have all you guys on.
Absolutely. That's what the slider's there for.
I've cranked it up to 80 to 90%. I think it really just depends on what the source is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I got some garbage.
I've gone as low
footage.
as 20 and as high as 90.
Okay. Yeah, because I got some garbage footage from a client with incredible background noise, and even voice isolation was having a hard time. I mean, you can only do so much, right?
No, that's true. That's true.
I think
you can only
honestly, for us Final Cut users, I think to a certain degree that it's almost hypocritical to not embrace these things, seeing that us early adopters of Final Cut and all the things that it kind of, the way that Apple designed Final Cut initially, how it removed a lot of redundancy from our workflow, things that we don't have to do it anymore. But I think there's a part of me that wants to make sure that the fundamentals aren't lost. But at the same time, depending on sometimes you just have to click that button and go. You can't. Yeah. I'll send it to Pro Tools person.
Richard's red phone is going.
I wonder how much we do really need to teach fundamentals. I had a long time ago, around the advent of nonlinear editing and the Media 100 debate, and there was a whole group of people said, "No, you cannot possibly learn editing until you've suffered through linear editing and timecode woes." And I paraphrase, of course, but I suffered through it, so you're going to have to suffer through it, despite the fact that you largely, for the sort of work that a lot of people do, you don't need to care about any of that. It just copy the file off the DV tape and away you go. I mean,
you're right.
As a trainer, I often get concerned that we feel it's so important for people to understand the fundamentals when they just want to get stuff done. And I want people to understand. I want to shove the fundamentals down their throat, and often they just want to get stuff done. And the
Well,
voice isolation is great because
I agree with Philip like 100%. I think it's more of a mindset where it's like it's kind of like for instance, I'm just now starting to teach my son how to drive, right? And yeah. So the point is all these vehicles, they have navigation systems. He has his phone and things like that. So when things don't work, when you're in a position where you have to rely on tools where the system isn't doing it automatically for you, then what option do you have? Hence, Thomas Guide, and I still keep one. Not that I use it, but I still keep one. It's just more of, I'm not saying that they have to use it wholly. At least they are have an awareness of what it is and what it does. Ultimately, they're going to use the AI features and things like that.
Right.
But at least having a
Right.
That's all.
like something about use the analogy of driving a car. I mean, once upon a time, I would have had a vague idea of how to sort of get myself out of trouble if we're on a dark road at night. But in a modern car, it's like, well, if the cell phone isn't going to call me AAA, I am really screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
Nowadays, absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the interesting.
But the analogy there is to the AI tools, because I use a car every day that I have no possible understanding really down in the detailed level how that works. It's just a magic device that I put a key in. I mean, it is a customized computer that's designed as a car, as opposed to a customized computer designed as a camera, or as a customized computer designed as a refrigerator.
Absolutely. So when I've been working in DC since all through the 90s until I retired. Before navigation, before iPhones, I had a whole thick thing of maps, including a street map of DC, a street map of Virginia, a street map of Maryland, because that's how we got around. But nowadays, I have them there, but for emergencies, in case the internet goes down, and cell phones. I have them for emergencies, but I haven't used them for so long. I do look at them once in a while, make sure they're not all crumbly.
Well,
yeah,
unless you're traveling in the middle of nowhere and your GPS isn't working, you can't, and you have no internet. I mean, Siri sent me all over the mountains of Oregon until I finally hit a dead end, and I had to open all these gates to try to get where I was going. And had I not had a physical map, I wouldn't have known where I was. So
absolutely. So, Philip, what you were saying is absolutely correct. Some of the basics we perhaps don't need anymore, but we still need a few. Okay, we still need a few. For example, we do need good audio. That's important. Basic. We do need framing and lighting. Those three things, I think you're going to need regardless. And other things like we used to have to worry about time code and stuff and all that. And nowadays, you just throw clips on the Final Cut Pro timeline, and somehow they do magic and makes it all work.
Remember the discussion of drop versus non-drop?
Oh my gosh!
Oh man,
that still comes up.
Well,
that still comes up sometimes.
When they changed, why didn't they just get rid of the drop? I mean, why didn't they get rid of?
You have to have drop drop frame time code for broadcast.
For broadcast, but really, because do you watch anything over the air TV anymore? Everything's on the internet.
Well, if you want anything to accurate time, and so it's not just for broadcasters. If you're having non-drop time code, it is not going to be an accurate time count. So you're going to be losing or gaining extra time. And I had to actually, before I got a full understanding of it, I had to set up all the frames at like 1/30th of my dimension, and then all the frames at 1/27.97th of the same dimension, and just see them slowly shift out of sync as the two time code stands. And as I always remind people, no frames are actually dropped. No frames are actually hurt in this process. It is only transform metadata. The underlying data doesn't change. It's the way it's transformed for display changes.
Right.
And in Final Cut, if anybody has an issue where somebody recorded their time code non-drop frame, because I had this happen, and one was drop frame, there is a checkbox in the settings in Final Cut in the inspector where you can switch frame to drop frame or vice versa. Because if they're different and you're trying to make a multicam, Final Cut will say I can't sync these things.
Yeah.
But if you if you had something like recorded wrong in terms of the time code, you just check that box and then go back, and then you can sync it. Voila.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I can't do this until you check that checkbox, because that's the secret magic that makes it work.
See, so,
Like
You
it's,
don't
If
notice
you
it
said
as
checkbox, you can
much.
do it automatically,
right.
Yeah.
You don't
these
notice
become
it
a-
as
that
much
seems
when
like
it's small.
feature request.
If it's a short timeline, you don't notice it as much. But if you're dealing with an hour and a half, it drifts way off. So
Well,
Yes.
About
that's
3
the
minutes
Times
an
is
hour.
talking about how it's counting frames, because it's recorded at
yeah,
2997, 2997. It's literally how it like embedded that metadata, and then Final Cut can switch it to the other one. But I don't understand why the multicam sync just doesn't understand that anyway. I don't know, like to Philip's point.
Fundamentally,
So
at the heart of a multicam is really another spine. The same as there's a spine in a compound clip. There's a spine in a project timeline. It's fundamentally very, very similar underneath. The structures are just built on each other, because why keep reinventing everything every time you do it? Like original Final Cut, the multicam was bolted in at about, I think, version 3 or 4. And so it was kind of convoluted to make it work, and you had to make sure you ganged this with that, and you remember. But by having another chance to stop and do it right on a different foundation, that it was much easier to get it right. But why that particular thing is a deal breaker for multicam, when every other compound clip and synchronized clip you can mix, or compound clip and project, you can mix frame rates without and drop and non-drop without any trouble.
So speaking of checkboxes, who would like to see a setting in Final Cut Pro that lets you save some of these default settings? Like spatial conform, like your audio, whether it's dual mono or stereo, like just give us a checkbox that says save as default, right?
Nice.
Or just save an effect preset for your own version of it.
Well, like spatial conform on your clips.
Yeah, but so do an effect preset. So you set up spatial conform the way you want, then do an effect preset that is spatial conform Richard's way, and then every time you want that preset, just load that preset you've created.
the effect has to be applied in the timeline. It's easier to just select all your clips and change the spatial conform before you drop them in the timeline.
Yeah.
Well, that's just one example. I've had multiple
but
places.
You mean like every time you open Final Cut and you import a clip and it has a different, set it to fill instead of fit as the default.
Yeah, just why not? Yeah, just why not just save it as default? Little checkbox next to the checkbox. That's what I like to see.
yeah.
But,
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I'd like it for the sound settings. I mean, there are certain things I have to do every time I cut a new OWC radio, and that's always the same. And I have to go into the inspector and I have to check all these boxes and change it all before I start cutting. It would be really nice if it would do that automatically. If I could have OWC radio setting for the audio, and there you have it.
You could do that with an effect preset. You can do that with an effect preset now.
Right, you can do that. But I mean, some of the settings that I change over and over again. Yeah. Some of them, I mean, not all of them, but some of them. Did you see recently?
For Serena's use, effect preset would be the way to go.
Yeah, I should do that.
So somebody recently Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Somebody recently posted a video about they had a download where you could change the color effects through what do you call those things go atop the timeline that affects all the clips underneath?
Adjustment layer?
Adjustment layer. So he had an adjustment layer that you can change the title to in the title inspector. So you can apply different adjustment layers, different things. But this is one of my pet peeves. You can also right-click on an adjustment layer and change it in the timeline, the title. Okay? I don't know when that came into being, but it's there now. So my point is this. I don't want to go to the inspector. I want to do things right where they are. So if an adjustment layer is in the timeline, I want to right-click there, not click on it, go up to the inspector to change it, and then come back to the timeline. I'd rather just do it right direct in the timeline. The title.
What do you specifically change?
Just the title. You can rename adjustment layers in the timeline. Just right click on them and rename is right there.
Yeah, you can.
Now I don't know when that came into being, but it's there now. So he was saying if you have 4 or 5 adjustment layers, if you have 4 or 5 adjustment layers, color correcting, you could rename each one now.
Yeah.
But I just do it in the timeline. I don't want to go from the timeline to the inspector, from the timeline to the inspector. Right click on an adjustment layer in the timeline and you can rename it right there. One of the options is rename. I didn't know that was there, but it is there.
Well, isn't that for any clip in the timeline? You can right click it and rename it?
I think it renames all the instances of that clip, doesn't it? It used to.
I don't like renaming clips in the timeline, the actual clips. I try to do all of that in the Finder before I import things.
Yes, I do too.
Into the library.
It's like instance by instance.
But if you option drag one clip and duplicate it twice over, if you only rename the first one, it's only going to rename that one. It's not going to rename the other two.
Yep.
Even though they're content wise.
Yeah, but just for visual workflow within the library, I like seeing the clips and I like knowing exactly what they are. I can't deal with these nondescript numbers that you get for clips. Is too confusing for me. So is anybody, I'm curious, are you going to the FMC event with Apple on the 13th? It's Tangier and Philip.
No,
well, Philip, you're not going, I don't think. Tangier, are you going?
Tangier, it's free for teachers and students.
Let me double check this. I'm actually looking it up again right now.
The one in LA you're talking about.
Yeah, they're coming to LA. I'm going to be there. I'm driving up for it.
Just come for the social mixer and get your free pass because you're in education, right?
Yep.
So yeah, you can just say I am an educator. Give me a free pass, and then just come hang out in Universal's. I think it's Universal City or somewhere in LA.
And Brad, you will be happy to know I'm finally going to get my certificate. I've been using Final Cut for like years and years and years, but I'm self-taught and I have bad habits. From how you're teasing me about my stacked timeline, so we're going to solve some of those issues. I'm never going to live that.
I'm not certified. Richard is certified.
Yeah, I got certified with version 1. And version 1, no, version 4, 4.5. And then I went to New York, Apple headquarters in New York, and got a trainer certification in New York for version 5. And we had a class of these were all trainers, 15 people, and only 2 of us passed the test, the certification test, me and a guy from Canada. On their first take, but I studied and studied and studied and studied and studied and studied and studied, and I've been a certified trainer ever since. But it stopped at version 4. They're not. I'm not sure what.
When you say 4,
Final Cut Pro 10.4.
10.4.
10.4. Sorry. Okay. The Apple Certified Trainer certification stopped at version 10.4, but I'm not sure what they're going to do with 6. They haven't decided yet. Future Media Concepts and Apple are working together. If they're going to have trainers, because I guess Future Media is using all their people as trainers at this point. They haven't decided yet, so they might go back to training again. Yeah, but I got certified. So we got a comment.
Yeah.
What are some tips you have for running a production company using Final Cut Pro? Is it possible without using Adobe?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not only possible, it's preferable. It's preferable not to be using Adobe.
I think
Brad, you and I worked together. I did that presentation for the Creative Summit about if you're a Final Cut editor, how do you take jobs if they're using Avid and Adobe and Resolve for the output, so you can still take that job. You can work in the field. I'm talking about field production now. You can work in the field as a Final Cut person and still deliver to any of those other NLEs. It's possible. But we run Final Cut here mostly, although I was threatening to use Avid on one of my theatricals. I think I should.
That's a bad idea.
I just said it to get a reaction.
Can you live edit that out?
So,
Yeah,
Well, you know,
Tangier, what do you use? Do you have in your classes?
Final Cut Pro and Resolve mostly. I was ambitious in hoping to teach three, including Premiere. But the reality is that a lot of students, they've used iMovie, either on their own computers, they've used something on their phone, and Final Cut is nice for them. A lot of them like using Resolve, and that's a big part of the equation actually is accessibility. Because a lot of students don't have Final Cut Pro on their computers outside of the school. And we have all M1 iMacs. And so what I'll have to do with students is they will edit on Final Cut Pro, and then if they didn't start on Resolve, then I will move them using an XML to Resolve so they can edit outside of school at home. That's really the only option right now. They don't want to purchase a subscription to Adobe, and our school, even though we have a license for all the students, the Creative Cloud, it's bound to, and I've never seen this actually happen. It's actually bound to our school's network. I tried logging in from home and I couldn't access it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's bound to our network at school. I've never actually seen that happen. So Resolve, it's a big win for students in the sense that they tend to prefer, majority, not all, they tend to prefer Final Cut. But when it comes to accessibility, most of them have Macs. Some few have PCs, but either way, they can download Resolve at home and keep on working on their own time.
now,
Yeah, I think
Tangier,
the
is this
key there
original
is-
footage? Is
Say
this
that again?
original footage that you guys are shooting that you're working
This is their
with, or
footage, yes.
oh, you broke up? Oh, original. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lag here. I'm sorry, Bradley. We should talk about Edit Mentor.
Well, before I get to Edit Mentor, I was gonna this note on running a production company using Final Cut Pro without Adobe. I think there's two major areas that people are gonna push back and say you need Adobe for this and you need Adobe for that. One would be the graphics and images, which I would probably at this point to Pixelmator Pro, but also Affinity has a great set of tools. So between Pixelmator Pro and Affinity, like they have everything you'd need, Illustrator and Photoshop and those types of tools for. And Pixelmator Pro is really cool because it works with motion, which then is the other part of the equation. People will say that they need After Effects. And the easiest way to replace After Effects for a lot of things is Final Cut Pro and Motion, and getting, you can either buy Motion VFX stuff or you can build your own stuff in Motion, or if you need to go like do visual effects work or something even more intense, then I would point you to using Resolve with Fusion. So between those things, I've had no need to use After Effects myself or Photoshop. Of course, there's jobs where I work with people who are using those other tools, and if somebody's using After Effects, then I just ask them to give me a ProRes 4x4 file with an alpha channel that I can then use in Final Cut Pro. So I'd say absolutely, if you are wanting to go all in, you can, and you don't have to pay that subscription fee to Adobe.
Bradley has the best shirts.
Depends on who you're working with. Yeah, that's my friend Bob.
I have to have an Adobe suite. I can't live without it. I'm on it every day. But that's the still photography side of the business.
Adobe was very smart getting into schools and stuff. They really get their hooks, Photoshop and After Effects, not Premiere. That's not what the hooks are. The hooks are Photoshop and After Effects. And I understand that they did that. But listen, Blackmagic is phenomenal, giving away a free version of Resolve. That is a great way to get it, the Trojan horse to get into the Resolve ecosystem. It's free. And the free version is almost, 80% or 90% of what the studio version is, the paid version? It's absolutely incredible. The other thing
Yeah.
is, what the heck is going on with Resolve on the iPad and Final Cut Pro
I
is
was
still
going
not
to
there?
ask that.
Oh gosh.
I want it.
No.
When I thought the students are going to love it. Aren't they going to love it when it finally comes out?
Let's let Philip talk about that. Philip, your opinion of Final Cut Pro. I'm putting you on the spot on the iPad.
The question is, how much resources do you want moved away from the desktop?
I don't want them to move any away from the desktop personally. I'd rather keep them all on this.
No, that's not an equation like that. If you want an iPad version of Final Cut Pro that's going to have be marginally better than Luma
Fusion.
Fusion. Yeah. Okay, they come in the Fusion and the Touch computers.
Right.
But if you want something that's marginally better than what already exists, that's not going to take resources away from Final Cut Pro, then fine. But if you want a Final Cut Pro iPad version, then there are going to be slower development for Final Cut Pro desktop because the team is finite size.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
I discussed this with some of my editor peers, and I see the benefit even with LumaFusion. And when I saw Resolve on the iPad, it's just kind of like it's another kind of blow for me to like Apple, what's happening with Final Cut, what's going on. However, I still just need screen real estate. I just really need a bigger screen. Maybe there's a few moments where I need an iPad, but
look at this. Look at this. This is my screen.
Yeah.
This is my screen.
Wow. Richard has enough screen real estate.
So
yeah, there you go.
This is the new look. Look how many times you guys are on my screen. You're confusing me. So this is the new version of Ecamm Live. This is the beta version. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And down here, where is it? Down over there. No, over here. The bottom right-hand corner is a new camera picker. It's different than they used to have a real small, teeny one. Now I get a much bigger one, and I can like preview you guys before I put you on the screen. But this is the new version of Ecamm Live. It just came out yesterday. They did a live demo. I said, I'll try it. I'll try it live. One of the other things that this is supposed to do, now I don't know if it is or not, they added ISO audio recordings a long time ago, 6 months ago. This one's supposed to have ISO video recordings as well. So we're streaming live. I'm switching it live. It's supposed to be recording everybody's video separately as a separate file. That's what it's supposed to be doing. Now, like I said, really? Really? Can they do all that stuff? So, and it also streams to up to 10 different destinations now. Ecamm Live does. Now, I'm not using that. I'm using Restream because Restream only requires one stream going up rather than 3 or 4. But yeah, that's my screen.
Seems like if you'd be streaming to all of those outlets at the same time, you'd really get some latency, wouldn't you? During the broadcast, that would.
I don't think scary. I don't think any more than Restream. No? I mean, yeah, I have 7 frame delay on my audio on my video because I took, I did a recording and I took the audio into Final Cut and I can see, I did claps and stuff and I can see when it's supposed to be and I adjusted it by 7 frames to line it up. I check it every once in a while. It seems to change. It was 5, now it's 7. So.
Well, on the point of the Resolve on the iPad, because I was definitely taken off guard when I saw Resolve go to the iPad before Final Cut Pro. I wonder when it actually rolls out and when it's available, what the user experience will be like, because the cut page is more conducive and it looks like they're limiting to work with the iPad. But at the same time, I'm curious what the user experience is going to be. I'm sure, I would hope that Apple has been testing Final Cut Pro on the iPad, and there's reasons why, as the current interface exists, why it hasn't come over, or maybe, I've said this before on the show that I think iMovie should get improvements to be more usable on the iPad, but I'd be curious to see what the cut page and the color page, what users think, and maybe this will be something that's vindicating for Fusion and for Final Cut Pro. Maybe people won't enjoy it. Maybe it's just not the right platform for those tools. Obviously, the edit page on the iPad from Resolve would be horrific.
Right.
The cut page may be better. The nice thing is I've felt like the cut page was always kind of half baked when it was rolled out, and maybe Resolve has committed to improving the cut page.
Yes, they did.
So that could be really cool to see. It doesn't work well with audio now. They're going to fix that. I don't love how the cut page uses the multicam sync bin. It's just not how I like working with multicams. I'm sure for some people it's more intuitive, faster, but for me I like a contained multicam clip. So these are just things I think ultimately the user will decide. And who knows, maybe Apple will be vindicated in terms of the Pro Apps team, Final Cut Pro, and saying, yeah, this isn't the right interface or the right way to do the software on there. I think they've clearly built it from the ground up.
So we just sold a copy of Final Cut Pro. We make sure you guys give Apple your PayPal account to get your share for the commission for this.
No, so I think about where's your media living. If you're working with Resolve or LumaFusion on your iPad, where's your media living? You know?
Sure, absolutely.
You're not going to download all of that media onto your iPad, so it wouldn't be, it's not enterprise level by any means. And if it's not enterprise level, then why not use either? So you can use Resolve on the iPad, you can use iMovie on the iPad, you have LumaFusion, LumaTouch on the iPad. So I don't know.
So I think that there's a couple solutions with that, though. Sorry. I'll get this thought out, and then we'll go to maybe Tangier and I are thinking the same thing. One is the iPad Pro does not have a Thunderbolt connection now. I think it does. It's at least a USB-C. The other thing is it goes up to 2 terabytes
you take your
storage,
power
which
port.
is not.
You have to use your power port.
You can power over Thunderbolt. So you could fix that, and it's a long battery. It's a long life battery. My point being is I wouldn't use storage. I'm saying that there's enough internal storage now with 2 terabytes. You can definitely do proxy workflows. You could probably get away with short form projects. I have 4 terabytes inside my MacBook Pro, and I'm using about half of it. And I've put multiple feature films of just proxies and projects on it. And I just, I'm able to just take the laptop. I don't even take external drives now. So the iPad is getting there. And so I think it's what's the project you're working on, and are you doing a proxy workflow? I think it's much more feasible than it was 2 or 3 years ago to edit,
thank heaven.
to bring a project with you. And there's a lot of, they've improved how the file space, like how files are being managed. Now you can access files from external drives and things. So, and you can dock it, you can dock it with a monitor, and you can plug in more hard drives that way. So I think it's getting there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've never used I use the OWC Travel Dock all the time on my laptop, but I wonder if I could also use it on my iPad. I don't see why not, right? On the iPad?
I don't know.
I don't know if it'll work.
One of the things that was in my mind when I upgraded to my current setup was away from an iPad to a MacBook 14-inch, MacBook Pro 14-inch, was that the MacBook Pro 14-inch is actually lighter in weight than the iPad Pro with a keyboard.
Wow.
Not by a lot, but it is still. So to me, there seems like, well, there's no super advantage. There's no, portability advantage in the iPad Pro that I don't actually have from my MacBook Pro with, connectors and external monitors and all of that stuff that I've got used to. I couldn't justify it. It's like, no, I would rather have the computer rather than the sort of truncated computer.
I think some of the younger editors are just coming up on the iPad. I think that's probably what it is. They're used to the iPad more than the MacBook. Go ahead, Tangier. You have something to say?
Yeah, there's 2 points I wanted to make. It kind of ties into something that Bradley was talking about. The first is that I will concede that and to your point, Richard, some people are just, a lot of students that I see, they are using iPads. They don't want to use a laptop, including my own daughter. My son, 3 years older, he's 16, MacBook Pro. My daughter has no interest in a laptop whatsoever. She has her iPad Pro, and she does all her work, creative work, schoolwork, everything on that. despite that the MacBook has a bigger screen, she's not interested. So that's one thing. I will concede that the iPad, when it first came out, I could not make sense of it. I really had little interest in it because my mind was obviously wrapped around Final Cut and creating content. It was too small. When I started thinking of the iPad as an appliance, that was the aha moment for me. Meaning I can put on the couch, in the kitchen, on the table, anywhere, quickly get to information quickly and use it that way. Then I wanted one. But to the point about Brad brought up about USB-C. So consider this happening. I just wonder whether or not we'll see a Final Cut for the iPad and things like that. To get around, we're at 14, so is it the 15 coming next? To get around, is it the EU that Apple has to have an all USB-C, iPhone and things like that? What if, when it comes to storage, Serena, what if, as a patent is showing, if Apple is going to potentially start using those magnetic points for moving data? Imagine a drive that's magnetic that you can put on there. That seems to be a direction that's open for Apple to kind of have all the devices USB-C, and because you were talking about power, Serena, and use those magnetic connectors. I think there's 3 or 4 dots on the back for potential new hardware, to not only use it just for putting a battery on there, but actually transmitting data to the device, to and from the device. So I'm wondering if that's an opening for some new products that haven't been realized yet that we just don't know about. Because I saw a patent for that, and I think that might be something that.
Yeah,
you guys
that's
know what
a
I'm talking
great
about?
idea.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that I just posted this last week or the week before, maybe it was the week before, is somebody said that the new iPhone 15 is not only going to have a USB-C port, it's going to be Thunderbolt, not USB. And that makes a big difference as well. Now, that would be even better than USB. So if that is true, and why wouldn't it be true? If there are already M2 chips inside the mobile devices, we haven't seen the M2s on the MacBook Pros, or, by the way, so Tim Cook missed the Mac Pro 2-year timeline. That's the only Mac he missed when he said we were going to have a 2-year transition from Intel to the Apple Silicon. That ended now.
It's Mac Studio, Richard.
No, they said at the Mac Studio event there's one more Mac to make the transition.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't make the 2-year cutoff with that.
But then, which is fine. I was surprised that they thought they were going to. I said, of all the ones, the Mac Pro is not the one to be rushing. That's the one to take your time and do it right, fellas. You don't want another event where you have to bring all the editors together and say, hey, we made a mistake. We backed ourselves into a thermal corner with the bagel warmer, Mac Pro. I don't want another one of those. So take your time. Nobody. I'm just mentioning they missed that. They got everyone except for the Mac Pro, which would probably come out in the spring. By the way, I want to do this one. When I had that screen up with all the different my screens, this is what Gabriel said.
Looks like the Brady Bunch.
Altogether, too many Bradleys.
Yeah. World can't handle that.
Do you know it's been 12 years since... No, go ahead.
Sorry, the iPad Pro does have Thunderbolt. It does have Thunderbolt on the iPad Pro. So we're getting there.
Wait a minute. The iPad Pro has Thunderbolt, not USB?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was the iPhone. Yeah. This was the iPhone 15, which of course isn't out yet.
Right.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
The iPhone 15 is rumored to have Thunderbolt as well. It's Thunderbolt USB 4 port. So, and it has support for charging, DisplayPort, Thunderbolt 3 up to 40. The USB 4 and older USBs.
See, I didn't know that. I thought they were just the USB-C. I didn't realize it was Thunderbolt, because Thunderbolt is, to me, I like that much better than USB.
It just gives you a lot more connectivity options.
Yeah.
And it's faster. It seems to be, it is for me
so
anyway.
Serena, check your OWC docs with the iPad. I have no idea.
I wrote a note. I'm going to go in the other room. I'm going to pull out a travel doc and I'm going to it to my Mac, my iPad Pro, and I'm going to see what happens. I bet you it'll work. Which
iPad
Pro?
See. Which iPad Pro do you have?
It's from last year, so it's not the brand new one. I don't think it's not the brand new. that old.
Okay.
I've been using and Tangier, you're going to find this funny. In 2010, I was one of the first people to buy the iPad Pro. And I think I could possibly claim to be the first commercial use of the iPad Pro because I had one of those early versions and I went to CES and I was shooting on the iPad Pro on a tripod and everybody was looking at me going, what the heck is that? And I had an SM58 through an iRig Pro cable. And I was editing on iMovie, sitting down in the booth on the floor of the booths of my clients. And so I would shoot the video, get the sound. I would sit down using iMovie, add music, add time, and then upload it. And they couldn't believe that this was happening. This was 12 years ago now. It's unbelievable. 12 years ago. Where does the time go?
I didn't want to give the wrong impression that I don't see a place for it. I see a place for sure where I could leverage an iPad with whether it's Resolve or Final Cut Pro on it, LumaFusion. When I'm on the go, when I'm on a set, I've seen iPads used on set and with various software and using metadata and things like that for Final Cut Pro. I see a place for it. I'm saying as when it's time for me to when I have quick turnarounds like that, and if you're like in the situation you're talking about, completely get it. But when it's time for me to really sit down with a really big project, that's when it just makes no sense for me. That's when I need my 2 and 3 monitors and I need a lot of space.
Yeah.
And I need my, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I would never use it. I see a place for it. But I don't really see myself editing like scripted content or feature films on a small screen unless I can use the iPad and take it and plug it into some other, larger screen or device. But I can see, maybe one day we have an iPad Pro with those magnetic ports being used for data transfer, and we have a slap-on magnetic NVMe drive RAID stuck to the back. That would be fantastic.
Or we just have a MacBook Pro. Or we just have a MacBook Pro.
Thank you,
There
Philip.
you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know that
You've
OWC
got
makes
three
a
power
version.
supplies to bother with. You've got 3 power supplies to bother with because you've got to supply the drives. You've got to power everything else separately. You've got many more carrying cases to bother with to make it portable. To me, it's like it's working hard to make something inappropriate, try and make it work anyway. And this just does not make any sense to me.
This thing right here, this
as
Envoy Express, I use that a lot because it actually attaches to the back of my laptop and I'll plug it into the laptop, but I haven't tried it. It's not going to go onto the iPad. I don't think. No.
So
Well,
just
this is
imagine
where I see like the
three
hand up.
magnetic on the back of it.
Okay.
Selena.
Huh?
Yeah.
No, this
3 magnetic connectors that you just attach.
Oh, wow. I just plugged this Envoy Express into the iPad and it says USB accessory, unlock iPad to use accessories.
Ooh. What I was going to say is I see the iPad MacBook Pro ecosystem as something that will lean more on cloud storage and that sort of thing. So I don't see you having to carry cables in the future. I hope that AirPlay and Wi-Fi networks get strong enough that you don't need to plug a cable TV. What I do currently, especially when I'm editing feature films, and I've been doing this month actually, is I have a proxy version of my film I'm editing on my laptop, and I just bring my power cable HDMI, and I don't even have external drives. I go to his house, I plug into his TV, and we edit all day. I did learn, though, that you don't want to be sitting on a couch hunched over a coffee table because that will hurt your back.
Yes, absolutely.
But we got a nice setup with a little table for me, and it's been going great. So I think I would love to get rid of the HDMI cable. I would love battery, life to continue to increase, so I'm not plugging into a power source. And I would love to be able to access. I mean, this is kind of a pre-show conversation we're having about the cloud and some of the vulnerabilities, but I would love to have instant access to my library database, and then it's a seamless handoff of I go here, I'm editing, I go back to a studio and I'm editing the same thing, and I'm not having to transfer anything I'm not having to like resave anything or move things over or import or export projects or libraries or anything like that. It's just synced in the cloud, and it's a seamless handoff. And please get rid of. I have a mess of cables. I would love to start getting rid of more cables.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
know. Don't you love those advertising photos for hardware? And there's no cable on the desk
Yeah.
anywhere. It's
We
like
hide all the
we need
cables.
one of those reality checks. I mean, I have cables and drives everywhere, just everywhere.
Yeah.
By the way, I can't see where this USB accessory. Where would I find it on the iPad?
Files
I don't know.
application.
I'll figure.
Yeah, sorry, Philip got there an answer.
Save
The files application.
files, and then okay, we'll work on it later. I'll send you guys a note.
I like Mac OS much more than I do iOS. It's just to me, it's just more robust, and it's not just that I know it better, but just like just now, you didn't know where that thing was attached. You have to go into the Files app, and you have to go in here. Now, people have been saying, oh, iOS and Mac OS are merging, and Apple keeps saying they are not merging, absolutely not merging. I'm not saying that they won't at some point, because I always remember Steve Jobs holding up a little iPod and said, who wants to watch a movie on a little screen like this? And of course, he was already working on the video iPod at that point. He just didn't want people to know about it. So they do sometimes look over here, do that, but I like Mac OS much better than iOS, personally.
Tim Cook in a presentation once rashly said that you can do everything on an iPad that you can do on Mac OS on a Mac. And I have a notes document that is increasingly large of all things you cannot do on an iPad that you can do on Mac OS. Drag a copy in Calendar, for example, of an event. Do that.
Okay.
It's a whole list. I've got anytime Tim Cook would like to find out all the things that you can't do on an iPad that you can do on Mac OS.
Everything Tim Cook needs to do on the Mac OS, he can do.
Absolutely. Yes, that is so true.
Well, I don't think the iPad's
developers are just rolling their eyes.
No, it's not. The iPad's not intended to replace the Mac Pro I've got sitting over there, but it sure is nice. Matter of fact, it runs Netflix most of the time. I'm watching movies on Netflix. Yes.
Did I hear one of you mention a potential folding iPad in the future?
Well, when you were talking about the magnetic, I thought, wouldn't it be great to have an iPad where you had the monitors fold out? So you have two monitors that go with your iPad, just these little skinny little things.
And then that's a MacBook Pro, right? Like Philip said.
Well, what's the Samsung that folds that, how long will it be before Apple has their own version, if at all, of some folding iOS device?
That doesn't interest me. I couldn't care less about it folding, personally.
Me neither.
I could.
But with a lot of people interested, seemingly, in using the iPads for a lot of creative work, maybe there's an opportunity there. Yeah, I'm not looking forward.
Don't you love the way they came out with the keyboard that works? But actually, the other ones never work.
Serena, hold that up there for a second. Hold that up there a second. What you just did. Now, face the camera a little more. Okay, there is your touch screen MacBook Pro right there. Yeah. People keep saying they're not going to make a touchscreen MacBook Pro. There it is. Touchscreen MacBook Pro.
I have my iPhone just on a little stand to the side here, and about 3 minutes into just doing a few little things on the screen, my arm starts to tire, and after about 10 minutes of rotating my food bowl, my arm now wants to be like. So,
Philip, you're a brute.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah, but you're moving bags of cement and boulders. You can touch pad on them.
I should have more strength then, shouldn't I? I should be able to hold my own arm up.
Okay, well, you know what? It's Thanksgiving, and I really think that we should say thank you to Apple for all of this that we have in our lives and everything we can do with it. I mean, I've got Final Cut. There's four libraries that are open for projects that I'm working on. I don't know what I would do without it. It keeps me working, and nothing's perfect, and we always wish we had more. But I think we all agree we'd love to have it.
I agree with you, Serena, but I really, at this point, I really just want a major update. I think, Richard, you've had us on shows. We've all expected these big updates. It's like, can we just get the big one?
Well, it's
what
coming.
would you want in the update, though? What would you want in the update?
Tangier can say one thing. There is a big update to Final Cut Pro coming. There absolutely is. I don't know when it's coming, but it's definitely coming. There's got to be
2030.
They can't keep dribbling these two features at a time at us for the next 5 years. They got to have a big update. I'm hoping it's. Look, I'm the eternal Final Cut Pro optimist. I say that all the time. I'm hoping it's 10.7. We'll have to see and wait.
Do you think
the trend that I'm seeing is I'm seeing a trend away from desktop apps entirely. There are at least 2 new online-only NLEs. They're built from collaboration. Never mind the editor, but feel the collaboration, because that's the whole reason for being. And at this point, Final Cut is the only major NLE without collaboration. Scenery is one of them, and Veed is the other one. Both video editors and NLEs that import media, sequence clips, do composites, do titles, the basics of everything. But they're online only, and they're collaborations foremost. So there's a trend that is away from moving anything onto the iOS device, because once you're in a browser, browser is just as competent on iOS as it is on macOS. And so these things are independent of the device that they're going to be on, and they are taking a very different focus.
So, Philip, tell me this. Do you think that there'd have to be more work or a major rewrite of Final Cut Pro in order to incorporate collaboration effectively? Do you think that's the case?
I would think that it's a major job to implement that sort of collaboration, partly because only relatively recently have Apple built the foundation that enables you to collaborate on a core data application. Sadly, that is still a private API. And we can't use that yet. It's likely to eventually come to developers. So Final Cut would have to work within the Apple way of doing things. So it's going to be fundamentally different from the simple bin locking that pretty much everybody is doing. Avid designed a way of doing it 20 years ago, and nobody has come up with another way of doing it.
Right.
Brad and I had a conversation once, because I was saying, well, who would want collaboration? And he pointed out that a lot of people would want collaboration that I wasn't thinking of. And so I appreciated that conversation to open my thinking. But because of that, Apple are going to have to do something that is very non-geeky, that is going to be quite different from, say, the Resolve approach.
I think in order to collaborate properly, we have to remove the need that we have now in Final Cut of sharing the media. So each party has to have the exact replica of the media from the other, and then you just trade XMLs back and forth. That would be something that would be on my wish list. Where could we have a central repository and work from there? Right, Richard, you and I ran into that. We were trying to collaborate.
But the problem is XMLs are not complete. It's much better to share a library than an XML.
Exactly.
XMLs they're a workaround, but they're not, I'd much rather share a library file, pared down external media.
I think we did that on one of our last ones.
Information about the project.
What'd you say,
XML
Philip?
is the information about the project, but it's the information about the actual edit and the media. It has none of the interface are present. So if something like what's open in a project, something this week that I have run into, and somebody said, it would be nice to have this, and I said, yes, it would be, but we have to have it in the XML before we can act on it. And so there's the only things that are in the XML are what you need to reproduce the edit and the bins, but none of what is fancy in the interface or open or current, and that's where your library is going to give you a lot more information.
So in the timeline, the Final Cut Pro timeline, where you can Command Shift R to reveal, is that what it is, or Shift R to reveal in Finder for a clip?
Shift F, isn't it? Isn't it Shift F?
Is it Shift R? Why can't we do that with titles and transitions?
Because there's no media.
There's no source media.
But they exist in the browser. They exist in the title browser.
They don't. Not in the same way. They lack a lot of metadata that a clip has, like a physical location. So Because what is happening is that effectively the clip in the timeline is referencing the media file and saying, where else is that media file in an event? And if there's no media file, I would think there's no way of actually doing that.
Right.
But they know, and the inspector knows. The inspector, you can read the. I have to go if I want to look where a title came from. I click on it in the timeline. Mm-hmm. I go to the inspector. It has the title, and then I have to search in the title browser for that title. I'd rather just right-click on it and say reveal in Finder.
Yeah.
Or reveal in
and
title
if there was
browser.
A piece of media file, if there was a piece of media for it, then you could do that. But the fact that there is no media, the pathway, the way that they do it for clips, is not going to work for something that is not an actual physical clip.
Right? Yeah, I see what you're saying, Richard. But I don't think of it as the same way. But I see what you're saying as far as.
Well, the reason is I have thousands of titles. I have thousands of titles, and if I use something that I like, well, now I've got a workaround. I have a clipboard in Final Cut Pro, and I can keep all titles, and I can keep transitions and all that in this separate app. That's a floating window, and I have a specific Final Cut Pro version. I did a live stream about it. So I use that now, and it floats on top of Final Cut. So I have a Final Cut version, and I can go through all my titles. I can rename them, organize them, and whatever, and I can just use that. And that's what I do now. But I wish Final Cut Pro kind of had that built in. But I understand what you're saying, Philip. It's not a clip.
So Brad,
I agree with you also, Richard, that at least I wish I could from the timeline do reveal in Finder. You always have to, it's a two-step process for a clip. You have to go show in browser, then from the browser reveal.
Well, and also when you reveal in Finder, reveal in browser, sometimes I can't find it. Is it?
Yeah, they
just
need
like it's not clear.
Like when you're showing the same frame, like doing a Shift F, and it's if you're in icon view or something like that, it's still not always clear where things are. I have to do it multiple times to make sure. They should at least it just kind of scales up and down or about something. I just need some.
They should outline the clip or highlight the clip somehow and then show you the playhead. But right now it's like I do the same thing. I got to do it 2 or 3 times sometimes to get that even a clip to reveal in Finder.
Especially if you're in film strip view, for sure. I was going to say though, Resolve does let you match back to media in the Finder or in the media pool, and sometimes I get those mixed up. So in a way, I kind of like that Final Cut forces you to do the 2-step, because sometimes I'm in Resolve and I'm like, no, I didn't mean to pull Finder, because it's just a reveal.
No,
and I'd say one of the things that really gets, I think, kind of going back and forth sometimes with Final Cut and Resolve, and obviously using Final Cut the most, is that I want access to every feature all the time. And I can't do that. It changes whether you're on the cut page or the edit page. Contextual menus change, and I don't like having to have certain options only in certain parts of the software. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. I want everything everywhere. That's what I want.
I did want to address.
That's what happens when you cobble together software from 4 different developers.
No, absolutely.
Brad, I want to ask you, while we're on the title and naming titles and finding titles, you can right-click on a title in your installed titles in Final Cut. But remember when I built those titles for the Zach Arnold interview that I had cut, and then you were cutting the So Crispy interview, and we were trying to find where those titles were that I had built. How did you did you have to rebuild them? Because I couldn't find them. Remember?
No, I think you just.
Those were lower thirds.
Yeah, you just told me the name of what you were using, and I just searched it.
Yeah.
And
you had to rebuild it.
Yeah, one thing we do on Cinema Therapy is we use PostLab, and we built like basically a template library that we start every project with. We're kind of in the middle of figuring out what's too many transitions and titles and the sound effects. But we have a timeline that has everything built out and it explains when you should use whatever. But we're also pulling that back because we realize that some of those were special case for 1 or 2 may be overwhelming and too much for our editors. So there's a balance there. But which brings me to my other point. If you and Richard are sharing stuff, I think you should definitely talk to Gergana about LucidLink and how you could use that in your workflow. Because that is a central, it costs some money, but it's a central way to store your media on the cloud and share between both of you, and the file paths don't change. So if you pass Final Cut libraries back and forth, the file paths will stay the same. I use it for proxy workflows.
Okay.
Full disclaimer, I don't
Right.
at least, well, you don't want to start getting more than like a terabyte of data up on there.
Yep.
But that has been a huge help, and then you're not playing the relinking game or the import export XML game.
Right.
Combine that with PostLab, and then you kind of have a nice way to hand libraries back and forth through PostLab. And PostLab uses PostLab Drive, which is white labeled Lucid Link under the hood. I think we talked about that earlier. But depending on how much you're doing it, may be worth looking into. The other old-fashioned way, the manual way, is just each have an external drive that is named the same thing, and make sure you like carbon copy or whatever between them. So there's different ways to do it, but the manual way is a little more painful than I think the Lucid Link way.
Let's have a vote. So the Final Cut Pro team at NAB 2017 announced 2 million Final Cut Pro seats, whatever the seats are. And the following year, 2018, they announced 2.5 million seats. Since then, they haven't said anything, but are we up to 4 million to 5 million at this point, do you think? Because they jumped from 2017 to 2018, they jumped 500,000.
And then to 2019 at ABC, Atomos also dropped the $3 million number, and they wouldn't have dropped that on the booth in a public announcement if they
That's true.
They hadn't been Apple approved. So I would say that they're at 3 million there, and so that's probably on target for 4 million by now.
Yeah, I would think. I'm just always curious. I mean, they started releasing those numbers on a yearly basis, and they stopped. I've heard the reason why. I think Brad told me, but what harm does it tell you?
The numbers are also very, very much delayed from when the milestones happened. The $2 million number, was it in NAB 2014, or was that the 1 million?
No, well, you mean Final Cut, the legacy version?
No, the original Final Cut.
2017 was 2 million. 2017 was 2 million.
It was 2 million in like 2014.
Yeah, they announced the 1 million in 2014 NAB. We were privately told that number 5 months before that they had reached that milestone. So there were 5 months. I suspect we were told to see if we would leak, and we passed the loyalty test. But
right, that's a good way to do it. Put something specific in each individual person's information and see if they leak it. That's fine. That works.
That's what they do. That's the test, and you don't want to break those relationships.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The only thing I'd add, Richard, to your numbers thing, because obviously there's not a lot publicly said about numbers, is that Tim Cook during the pandemic had an earnings call and said that they specifically called out Final Cut Pro and Logic, and when they announced kind of their 90-day free trial period, that they had seen records amount of people getting the software. I don't know if that means those were just people trying out the trial or how many people were buying it, but my gut feeling is that at that point, I mean, there was a lot of increase in NLE usage and people buying NLEs. Avid, for example, saw a huge spike in people for the first time having to buy licenses of Avid in over a decade. And their stock price has gone way up. I thought Avid was going to be dead for many years. And then I saw in the pandemic when everyone went home and they started using it. So I think that all NLE usage has increased, and I think Final Cut Pro has gone up a lot. But to how much?
I was just curious. I mean, we know it's more than 2. We know it's more than 2.5 million. We know that. That was 2018. That's old news. That's 4 years ago. So it has to be 4 million, 5 million. That's a lot of users. That's a lot of users. I mean, people talk about, I see this all the time, well, that's not used in professional filmmaking. Yeah, of course it is.
Are they still saying that? That is, whenever somebody says that to me, I go, have you had your head in the sand?
Well, the point is they think professional is Hollywood, which is this big compared to the 4 million, 5 million. It's this big. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that. It's prestigious. I know Steve Jobs used to like to go to the Hollywood events if there was a Final Cut Pro film, that was edited in Final Cut. I know he enjoyed that. But 4 to 5 million? How big is L.A., Hollywood? Tens of thousands? Philip, you would know.
People. There's only 12 people in our industry.
12 people.
Oh, can't hear you, Philip.
Philip, we lost your audio somewhere.
It's your.
There you go.
I muted myself to stop coughing. According to the Department of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are under 30,000 professional film and TV editors in the United States of America.
There you go. You mean for like the Hollywood section or all together?
That's what people who report on their tax returns that they are a professional film or TV editor.
Okay, that's film and TV. So probably the majority of those are for Hollywood, would you say?
Well, there would be the relatively small number of people who are actually working in film and television production, which I think, really shows the relative size of that industry to say, 4 million Final Cut seats, 4 million Premiere Pro seats, 100,000 of Avid Media Composer seats. I mean, there are obviously not 8 million editors in the world.
Right. Right. Well, speaking of that,
I'm always fascinated. I'm fascinated by the type of people that I find using Final Cut Pro. You got like people that are doing all sorts of YouTube channels, or doctors, medical doctors, or like pastors of churches. There's just such a wide use. And I sometimes will watch a YouTube channel. It's obviously not a professional editor, but maybe they're a nurse practitioner or somebody, talking about something in a completely different field, and that's their full-time job. And I'll see like a little only in Final Cut transition or motion VFX thing or whatever, and it just clues me off. I'm like, oh, they're using Final Cut Pro 10, and I come across that on the regular. So I'm always interested in that broader video literacy world. And I think that is a huge amount of Final Cut Pro users that need something that's more powerful than iMovie, but are intimidated by tools like Resolve, Adobe, and would never consider getting Avid. That said, I would love to see Final Cut Pro being used more in Hollywood or more in some of those higher end workflows. That's what I've been pushing for a long time, because I think it's not just the prestige, but also it's kind of like how you're testing the application, like robust is it? And what ways can it be used, and what ways can it be improved? And I love Apple's philosophy of taking complicated things and making them easier for the masses, but being able to accomplish the same thing. So there's obviously competition. There's a race out there. I think that I saw a comment about, Blackmagic, the most used NLE in Hollywood. I don't think as an NLE that's true at all, not based off the conversations I've had with Hollywood editors. It's still Avid is king, but maybe Blackmagic is making that claim because it is an NLE that is also really widely used for color grading.
I think it's a color grading numbers, yes. That's exactly what was stated afterwards.
Every Hollywood movie touches Resolve somewhere.
Yeah. No,
so it's a little PR fudge there.
Well, Apple doesn't do that, do they?
Nobody's ever done that.
Apple's never done that.
A lot of people moved from Premiere Pro. Remember when people moved from Apple for Final Cut to Premiere Pro, and then when Resolve became more accessible, a lot of young editors are now using Resolve, and I think Resolve on the iPad's it's just going to be interesting. I think of it as global, and whatever country you live in, that's your language. You may or may want to learn a second language or a third language, but whatever you use, that's what makes you happy, and use it. And I think you can cut anything on any of the NLEs. It doesn't matter if it's a huge theatrical feature, if it's something for Netflix or Amazon, or if it's a little YouTube video, you can use any of the NLEs. And,
speaking of that, I often see when people start arguing and say, I'm going to leave Final Cut and I'm going to go to Premiere. I'm going to leave Premiere and go to Final Cut. You can use more than one NLE. Yes. I mean, I use Final Cut primarily, obviously. I also really like LumaFusion a lot on the iPad. And then I like Resolve a lot. I'd like all three of them. I'd like them a lot.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to quit one in order to try another one, especially when Resolve is free. LumaFusion right now is $19 for the Black Friday special. I have it on my website. I have a whole list.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's $19, and the Final Cut Pro export is only $9 right now. So it's Black Friday sale. So you don't have to. It's not a zero-sum NLE game. You can use more than one, you can buy more than two. You can have them on your timeline. You go back and forth.
Well, would this blow your mind? But I currently have DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut Pro open right now.
No,
it can be done.
No, you can't do that, Brad.
Wow.
Brad.
For those who are interested in just the perspective in terms of Hollywood and the mindset sensibility difference. In 2018 on FCP.co, there was a "Why Final Cut Pro is Huge in Europe" article. So it kind of leans into just the mentality that Europe doesn't have a top-down view the way Hollywood does. Why it might be doing well there. The other thing I wanted to mention too, when we were talking about something earlier, was have you guys seen in the recent days about the CNBC, the 10 most high stress jobs in the U.S.? How video editor. No, it's posted. 10 of the most high stress jobs in the U.S. and number 2 was film and video. And almost all the other ones, almost the majority of them were related to the medical field. But the second one on there was film and video editor.
I think operating a crane in New York on a high-rise building would be pretty darn stressful. Let me tell you. Now here's a comment I want to put up there. We know the answer to this. Will Final Cut Pro go on Black Friday sale? No, it will not. Nah. However, when I first got Final Cut Pro back in version 1, I did have those discount iTunes coupons that were like 20% off. So I did get it for 20% off initially. So, but I haven't seen those for years now. I haven't seen those discount coupons for years.
Philip, I'm sitting here. I'm just going, I'm biting I just wish I could talk about what's going to be happening with Builder. Richard, you have to have us back on the show. What, in a month, maybe?
Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me just, I have this up here. Let's do this. Let me see how I do this. Web page with cams. Here you go. So tell me about what you're talking about.
Oh, it's
as much as you can without, because Philip's right next to you right now. He can reach over and
put it this way. It's going to change. It's going to change things for you in a big way, I think.
We have a new version of Builder in preparation, Builder 4. It's simply say that the progression has been that in Builder 1, we introduced the ability to import transcripts and align them with text and edit with the text, I think in 2018. At that point in time, AI transcription wasn't there yet, so you had to bring transcripts from whatever source you would otherwise get them. In Builder 2, we introduced a partnership with Speechmatics, and you could order transcripts from inside Builder at the then breakthrough price of 35 cents a minute, when it was $1 and $2 a minute in the general marketplace. Builder 3 was our Premiere Pro support, and Builder 4 starts, I will say, we move the transcription into the app.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Oh, Philip, don't say anymore. I'm going to shut you up. Don't say anymore. It's more than that. It's
fundamental to the app. It's fast in the app. And
it's a little tease. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm so excited. I've got it loaded up here and I'm using it for the show I'm releasing later tonight. And it's really awesome. But there's some other things happening that Builder's been involved with that in January. There's going to be some announcement in terms of some things, some major film that used Final Cut and Builder, and it's going to be awesome. So check with us back mid-January.
We'll get you back on here specifically to talk about that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so proud of Philip and Greg. They're always on the forefront of everything that's happening, and especially with Lumberjack and the non-scripted area, and even just logging, but Builder itself is really amazing. So
not
I
only
probably
that,
should
but
have shut my mouth, but I love it.
we all, the three of us, and I think Brad was there last time. When we're at the summit, we go have Italian dinner together at that one restaurant. I think we've done it for 2 summits in a row. Brad, were you there last time with us? I think you were, weren't you?
Sounds like a thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think you were. Yeah. We just walk across a couple blocks away, and then we have dinner. That's one of the best things about the summit. I miss the summit so much, the in-person. There's the thing. I interviewed them at the very beginning when they first started doing this 10 city tour, and they said, we didn't do it this year, but they kind of hinted that it's coming back next year. So what I suggest to the FMC is do the kickoff event like you did with the traditional summit. If you want to have a 10 city world tour, do the kickoff event where everybody gets together, as Philip calls it, the Final Cut Pro annual family reunion. And you have everybody, 30, 40 Final Cut Pro personalities that are on YouTube and all over the internet, all together for 4 days. And if you want to kick it off from there, to do individual cities for 1 day. But it's, that's what I suggest.
Well, I am going to the LA one, so I'm
You are, Brad?
see some faces there. Yes, I am. I
can
booked
get to that.
the hotel. I've got the ticket. I wish they'd put
that's
more information on the
awesome.
website, but yeah, I'm gonna
see if I can get. I'm gonna see if I can get to that. So let's,
Please do, and let's all get together. There's going to be some people there that I'd like to just get together with you guys. It would be great. I think it would be great.
I hope I'm not wrong on this. I don't think it's posted on the website, but I was told that it should be at Universal City. That's what I've been told. So that's where I booked. I couldn't confirm that on the website, but that might help people who don't know. If you're planning and if you're in the LA area, that's where it's going to be at.
It's at
Hilton,
the Sheraton, isn't it? It is. It's the Hilton in Universal City. That big one,
so
right on the
that's
corner.
where it is, Tangier, and it is free for educators. So I don't feel like you should at least get a ticket and show up to the mixer thing that night, so we can finally meet in person.
This is what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Not me personally, but what's been happening around my.
That's unbelievable.
Those guys, 3 of them, with the highest powered leaf blowers you can possibly get commercial, they spent 4 hours working constantly, cleaning off my property, and they had to make 2 one-ton trips of leaves to get them off my property. And that's only one instance, because that wasn't the whole year. That's just, they all came down early this year. It's incredible. That team did a fantastic job. I'm going to hire them again next year. And that's besides the work that I do in between, to keep the driveway cleared and the front yard cleared and stuff. I have a pickup service that comes twice a month that takes 30 trash cans full of leaves, and I have them every time I have them full. I won't have them now because they took away most of them. But if I can get away from leaf blowing, maybe I'll come. I love the trees. I just don't like the leaves in the fall. I talk about it on Final Cut Pro Radio a lot. It's a lot of work this time of year. But anyway, they did a great job. They did a fantastic job. Philip, what are you up to? You said you're digging a mine, something in your front yard with Greg, or putting some kind of a trench in, or.
Uh-oh, did we lose Philip?
A little bit.
Can't hear you, Philip.
Stuttering there a little bit. There you go. Try it again.
Hit that again, because I keep muting it so I don't cough into everyone's ear.
There you go.
I've started working on the north end of the property, the only undeveloped section, and putting in a 10-step staircase and some retaining walls. And it's enough to keep me physically fit. And because the rest of the time
I agree.
I'm desk.
I agree. I like getting out and doing physical things besides sitting here and editing. All right. So happy Thanksgiving to all you. I really missed not seeing you at the Creative Summit. I really missed that. That was one of my favorite events of the year. Hopefully it returns in 2023. That's my hope.
I think it will.
And I'm doing the documentary. It's going to be out. It's going to be out and it's going to be out this year. It'll probably be December at this point, but it could be out at any time. I'm really close to releasing it. It's about 40 couple minutes at this point. And a lot of behind the scenes interviews. I talked to everybody, talked to Brad multiple times, Serena, I talked to Philip and Steve Martin and Mark Spencer and Chris Fenwick kept coming in, standing in front of the camera, not saying anything, just staring at the camera. Just the typical way he does things. So I have interviews
Chris
and I have just
stayed at my
behind
house
the
the other
scenes
week.
stuff. He was?
He what, Brad?
Yeah, he was on his way to Denver for a job, and he didn't want to. He says he's not going to fly anymore. So
I saw that. Yeah,
I did a swing by Eagle Mountain and spent the night. We played some card games with my family, and it was a fun time.
Oh, see,
all right.
That's important. The face-to-face interaction that human beings have.
Absolutely.
There's no substitute for it.
Absolutely.
Even though it's nice to see you guys on here, but. So I guess I'll see you at the summit. I mean, at the FCP. What is it even called?
It's the Global Summit, the World Tour now. It's not the Creative Summit.
I'll see you in the LA Whistle Stop.
And I'll see you, Serena, probably at NAB this year if everything continues the way it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be in Costa Rica for a month, but I'm coming back. I'm teaching. It's a guerrilla boot camp for documentary filmmakers, college-age filmmakers. We have 10 of them going into Costa Rica with us, and I'm teaching that month. But then I'm going to come back just in time for NAB. That reminds me, I got to make my hotel reservations again.
Yeah, I'm going to do that as well because they're easy to cancel if you have to cancel. So, so let me just do one more thing here.
Philip, are you taking off? Oh, Philip took off.
Philip's gone. So I have this Black Friday sales here. And look, Ripple Training is 40% off. AirPod Pros 2, $199. Topaz Labs, that AI video plugin app is fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic. It does a great job. It not only denoises, but you can upscale. So I use standard def and I do it 200%, so I have a much bigger frame. That's on sale. LumaFusion Black Friday sale, $19.99. Avid has a Pro Tools sale. Pixelmator Pro, I wanted to talk about that just for a second. They're doing video in one of the next releases. They've announced it. They announced it on Twitter. They're doing video. I'm not sure how sophisticated, but it might just be like doing filters or something, whatever, because I have Pixelmator Pro. I've been using it for quite a while. So,
and I love that you can save a motion project out of Pixelmator Pro. So that's really cool that they have video.
Absolutely.
Hey,
well,
Richard,
happy Thanksgiving to all you. The best of Thanksgiving.
Andrew, are you muted?
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm here.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Mouth.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Anyway,
thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Talk to you later.